Well, good morning. It is now 8:30. This is the WLBB Community Voice program here on News Talk 1330 FM 106.3. Also streaming live online at newstalk1330.com. I'm your host this morning, Colin Worthington. Well, the Community Foundation of West Georgia, they recently completed a door-to-door survey of those living in 5 local extended stay hotels. It's an effort to discover barriers to obtaining more permanent housing and develop community-based strategies. Now, they've completed that survey. They're sharing these findings on their website with the community, and they're identifying what can be done to move people from precarious to permanent housing, and that's the name of the report as it is released. Joining me this morning to talk about that, Kim Jones is president of the Community Foundation of West Georgia, and Jill Duncan, we're calling her a community volunteer, part of this project, Jill Duncan of Jill Duncan State Farm, and we appreciate both of you ladies joining us this morning. So good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
And I think Jill's put herself back on mute. Forgot to unmute her here. But anyway, again, thank you to both of you guys for joining us this morning. Take us back to the start of this project. How did it come about? It's obviously a problem. It's not like you guys were doing the research to see if this was a problem. We've identified the problem. And how did it come about as far as putting the survey together?
Sure. It's actually kind of interesting. We, many people may or may not know, during our grant process, we invite community members to come in and help review the grants. And I actually had a donor who sat on one, and he noticed that we were, granting a significant amount of funding to emergency assistance organizations. And he asked some questions about exactly what that was. And so a lot of it's temporary housing and extended stay, whatever. And so it really kind of started a conversation of exactly why are we spending so much money? What are the issues? Is it just first month's rents and deposits? And that kind of progressed to having a roundtable discussion with some local nonprofit providers who are trying to find housing for folks, as well as some landlords, and just really having a very open discussion of what some of those barriers are. And along the same lines, I had learned about a similar study for the city of Norcross and reached out to them. They were very helpful. And then, of course, what happened to a lot of us, the pandemic came in March, and so we were really close to launching the survey. And so then last fall, I reached out to Jill and some other folks in the community and said, hey, if you feel comfortable, of course we had face mask shields, the whole shoot match, and lined up to try to start going door to door to the local hotels. And it was very interesting. I mean, I think some of the important things that came out of this was, a lot of people have perceptions of why they think people are there or why they stay there. And then there's also the reality. And so that's what we were trying to uncover. Because I think at the foundation, we want to invest and help people become more stable and more productive citizens in our community. But sometimes we just assume we know what they need. And this was one time where we felt it was really, really important to go have the conversations face to face. And I was pleasantly surprised this survey is long. If you actually pull the raw data up, if you had to go through every single question, it's like 80 something questions. But if you, could opt out of some of them, depending on your situation, it was about 60. And I thought to myself, nobody's going to sit there and answer all these questions, but they did. And then the more rich part of this is that they talked. We had a conversation of really, why are you here? What's going on? And they just really opened up and shared. I think a lot of them, it was the first time anybody ever asked, what would be helpful.
And that would be my question. Initial question is, were they really open to answering these questions? You guys, I'm going to guess primarily strangers are coming in and asking them personal things, to better understand that. Were they all open immediately? Did you see some people kind of open up the more questions you asked? And did they feel like, did they trust that, hey, this could be something that could help us and help other people like us in the future?
And I'll let Jill chime in too. I think, it was a mixed bag, like you would expect with anything. But we really just tried to tell them, because if they start feeling comfortable, we said, look, if we kind of had to go to the very last question. One of the questions was, what is your barrier? Do you want to get out? Which is 0 to 5. You're wanting to get out of here with 5 men. I want out of here yesterday. And then the other thing's, what is your biggest barrier? But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised at just how many people really opened up and said, this is kind of what's going on. And Jill may want to share some of her experiences as well.
Hi, Jill. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Yes, I agree. I think that people were more than willing to share, and a lot of this was very personal, but I think they were so excited that somebody was asking with hopefully an opportunity to get the resources they need to help them if they wanted to move out of the extended stay facility, which I think the majority of them did. We're looking forward to getting that information out and in hopes of getting some resolution on it. And it was interesting to hear the stories of how they got there and what their barriers were and what they were trying to do to find permanent housing.
And this information is available on the Community Foundation of West Georgia website at cfwg.net. If you go to .org or .com, you're going to end up with Central Florida's woodworking company or something like that. But it's cfwg.net. There's a summary and there's also a detailed view of that as well. So take your choice. You may look at that summary and decide you want to read more detail on it. There's also some fast facts on there, interesting facts too, that may not have shown up in that report. Jill Duncan and Kim Jones, our guest on this morning's Community Voice program, as we're discussing that door-to-door survey of those living in local extended stay hotels. How did you decide on those hotels? Are they just more central to Carrollton?
Well, we did take just the ones just in the city of Carrollton. There are some in Villa Rica, but we kind of felt like we could probably get a good handle on what the data might show us. We reached out. There's actually 7. And how we determine which hotels, because they don't necessarily have extended stay in their name. We went to our nonprofit providers and the school homeless liaisons and said, where are your students living for an extended time? Where are you putting people up? And so we identified 7. We reached out. One hotel would not allow us to survey, which was fine. And then the other one, the 7th one, is a really small one. And by this point, we had very consistent data that we were seeing, and we felt like we were good. We were good to go. Are
the people living in these hotels, are they considered homeless when we collect our data every year? Talk about homeless in the community. Are they considered homeless?
No, not necessarily. And I think the surprising point is people that are living extended stay don't consider themselves homeless either.
Sure.
That was what we kind of figured out real quick, was because one of the first questions is, your purpose of your stay. Is it leisure, work, or whatever? And we actually had to chunk a couple of surveys because also we realized that they didn't perceive themselves as homeless. So we had to kind of loop back around and go, well, have you been here for longer than a couple of weeks? And I get it. I mean, that's a really tough thing to have to kind of sit there and reconcile with, that, yeah, I'm homeless. I'm kind of stuck here, and I don't really want to be here. And so they're not necessarily counted in that one-day count, which is, and that's a much bigger state federal issue, is that one-day count is really worthless. I mean, it's because there's so many people who are staying with friends, or it's just not a good, accurate count. I mean, and that's the number one question I think I have gotten so far is, well, how many are there? And I'm like, you know what? Take a good guess. I mean, I don't know that we will ever. I mean, that's a very elusive number.
Yeah, when we have those conversations, that seems, anytime you can put a number on something, that just seems to be the attention getter, and people will tend to listen more if they have that number and have a good idea. Jill, did you speak to anybody that seemed like they enjoyed? I mean, that they that put that 1 on that first question as far as how comfortable they were living in that situation?
There were several single men that liked it. That was where they said they wanted to stay. They did not want to leave, and we didn't go into the rooms, of course, while we were doing the survey, but the door was open, standing in the doorway, and they have it decorated just as if it were their home and their apartment, and pictures and so I guess that's where they feel comfortable, and it's just what they need.
Yeah, do we find a lot of kids in these stays?
It was kind of a mixed bag. I mean, we didn't see the number of children that I thought we would see, quite honestly. However, there's 2 factors kind of going on there. Number one, there were more men staying in the extended stay than there were females. And I think some of that has to do with the fact of, the females may be living there, but they just didn't feel comfortable opening the door to a stranger, which I understand. The other thing is, and whether right, wrong, or indifferent, people may feel more comfortable having, or maybe feel more sympathy for a mom with children, may take somebody in a little more readily than a single male. And so, but the ones, we had several in the survey that responded that they do have children, but they did not feel comfortable having them live there with them. So they were either staying with a friend or staying with a relative, temporarily. And so, but then some of the men particularly, have children, but they don't have custody of them, or they're over, 18. And kind of one other quick thing back to Jill's point is that, for some of those who don't want to move, they've developed a sense of community there. I mean, they know their neighbors. I mean, we had at one of the hotels, I call this guy my new best friend because he literally knew every single resident, and he was going around with us and, knocking on the doors with us and saying, hey, it's okay to open the door and that kind of stuff. And so, there is a sense of community for some of those who've been there, a good little bit.
Interesting. And for those, this survey, if they don't want to leave, then, we're okay with that. Is that right? We let
that's
that
their
be.
business. They're adults, yeah.
Kim Jones is president of the Community Foundation of West Georgia. Jill Duncan also on the program this morning as we talk about the Community Foundation of West Georgia's recent door-to-door survey of those living in local extended stay hotels, the attempt to discover barriers to obtaining more permanent housing and develop community-based strategies. We're going to talk about the results of their survey after we take our first break. Community Voice, brought to you by Tanner Health System, Oak Mountain Academy, here on News Talk 1330, FM 106.3. Time right now is 8:41.
As a graduate of Oak Mountain Academy, I've found that my experience on the mountain prepared me beyond all expectations. As a junior at Auburn University, I approached my studies with great confidence thanks to what I learned at OMA. When I think back on my time on the mountain, I think of my teachers. Their genuine love and concern for me as a student was always evident, and now, as an adult, I still foster those relationships. I'm Carly Robinson, an Oak Mountain Academy alum. Visit oakmountain.us to see how you can offer your child an amazing opportunity to be a warrior.
Travel, get-togethers, Sunday morning worship. COVID-19 has almost put a stop to our way of life. Vaccination is our best shot at getting back to normal. The COVID-19 vaccine is based on more than a decade of research. Trials show it's safe and can provide up to 95% protection when you've received both doses. Tanner is committed to making the vaccine as widely available as possible, giving you a shot at getting back to life. Until then, keep wearing your mask, washing your hands, and avoid gatherings. Learn more and get updates at tanner.org/vaccine.
It is now 8:42. Welcome back to the WLBB Community Voice program, News Talk 1330 FM 106.3. Also streaming live online at newstalk1330.com. And at the conclusion of this program this morning, we'll post the entire show to our website, newstalk1330.com, under the podcast section, and we'll be able to share it on the News Talk 1330 Facebook page a little later than that, a little later on this morning, closer to 12 o'clock today. Our guest this morning with the Community Foundation of West Georgia, President Kim Jones. Also Jill Duncan. She's a community volunteer as far as this project is based. It's a door-to-door survey of those living in 5 local extended stay hotels. It's an effort to discover barriers to obtaining more permanent housing and develop community-based strategies. We're going to talk about those barriers and those strategies with Kim and Jill right now. The recent survey had asked about housing stability barriers. What are examples of those?
There's several barriers. I think we kind of boiled it down to maybe 3 primary areas. One, and
when you boil them down, though, you're saying they were the ones that were predominant. They were the ones that received.
Yes.
Okay, I got
yeah.
you.
Well, kind of bubbled up from the barriers. One was, and this one was actually surprising to me, was the credit score. There were several questions there having to do with a credit score. Some of them obviously didn't know what their credit score was. Some of them did know what it was, but then they also didn't know how to fix it. And so I think the whole issue, because now, actually prior to the pandemic, housing was really tight. And so some of our local landlords have bumped up the minimum credit score that's required to get into an apartment, or, obviously to secure a loan, you got to have a good credit score as well. And so a lot of them have had, maybe one unexpected kind of, maybe we talked to those who had some medical expenses, or, they had temporarily lost a job, or, different things like that. And so the credit score is a barrier, and to be unable to either get an apartment or to secure a loan to get something like a house. The other thing was it was hard for them to find affordable housing close to work. A lot of them didn't have transportation, didn't have a car, and so they were trying to find housing that was within a walkable distance to being able to work, or just able to find affordable housing, period, was a challenge. And then one of the other barriers has to do with just the high cost of staying in one of those extended stays. they were unable to, kind of save up any money for that first month's rent and that deposit moving forward.
Yeah, what are the prices? I mean, I'm always shocked when I hear it, and we talk about, well, they can't get the down payment for a house, and it does make sense that's depleting their funds. But it seems like a lot of these for a month. I mean, I've heard stories between $1,400 to $1,800.
That's true. Yeah, some of them were anywhere from $150, $160 a week to $250 a week, and some of them, were more than that. So I mean, it was kind of interesting because there's one particular hotel we went to, and it seemed like every time we went to a different door, I was getting a different number for what they were paying by the week. And I thought, okay, this is kind of interesting. Sure. And so I finally asked one of them, I said, wait a minute, you're paying a different amount than the guy, 3 doors down, what's going on? And it was basically the longer they stayed there, they got, a little bit of a discount. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But yeah, some of them are paying as much as $1,300, $1,500. In fact, one of the questions is, I think some of them are paying literally, half of their income just to keep a roof over their head.
And I guess you'd have to consider they're not paying the heating bill. They're probably not paying water, probably not paying cable, even though, they have some sort of entertainment there. But
it's all rolled into one.
Yeah.
Kim, there were several people, 80, 90% of what they were bringing in was going to pay where they were, just a hotel. Mm-hmm. And so with that, and then add food in, it was almost exceeding everything they brought in just to have food and shelter.
So credit definitely something that affects them getting in, or help put them in this situation and not helping them get out. How about criminal histories? Did you come across any situations like that may have, affect them being able to get good credit or be accepted to get a loan or anything like that?
Well, that was one of the set of questions, and I think here again, it's perception and reality. I mean, 64% of people we talked to said they had not been convicted of a misdemeanor. 72% said they had never been convicted of a felony. 75% were not on probation. 86% said they weren't on parole. And so, it's not that there's this large criminal element living there. I mean, most of them, and even like the ones that had been convicted of misdemeanor, I mean, a lot of them were really minor and had been years ago. And I think that is, can be a barrier for some employers and some, landlords. But I think, if that happened, 7 or 8 years ago or 5 years ago, whatever. I mean, I think you've got to kind of look at the person holistically and not just that one particular area.
How about as far as education? Are we seeing high school graduates, college graduates living in these hotels and motels?
The educational level, hang on, I was trying to grab that number so I can give it to you actually.
And again, this is, I'll encourage everybody to check this full report out. We're just going to touch on it a little bit, but I encourage you to check out the website, cfwg.net, and you can find the extended survey, the findings report, and also a summary of everything. But we were just talking a little bit about it this morning.
Yeah. There's certainly some educational deficits for sure. I think maybe 40% of them, I can't find that number right in front of me, but I think it's maybe around 40% who is lacking a GED or high school diploma. We did run into some folks who had a technical college degree, and we ran into some who had 4-year degrees. And so, and here again, then that educational attainment then rolls into, the type of job that they can, obtain. And so a lot of them are kind of forced into low-wage jobs because they don't have the educational attainment, and that creates a whole other set of issues. We did find some who, are working minimum wage jobs, and a lot of them are working temporary or gig jobs, of being an Uber driver or a Lyft driver or, that kind of stuff, or working through a temp agency. And then that does not create any stability, in order for them to save up any money at all.
We'll talk about. We've talked about some of the issues that you've uncovered in this segment. We'll talk about the next segment. We'll talk about some things that we hope the community can consider doing to help those situations, to give them an opportunity to get away from this if they'd like to. Jill, what was the most surprising thing? You may have touched on it a little bit already, but perhaps what was one of the more surprising things that you learned during these interviews? I think
one of the most surprising things that so many of the residents are from Carroll County and had been here, a lot of them their whole life, and most of them had been here 5+ years. And that was one of them. And then the length of time that they had been living in extended stay as well, some of them years. And those two factors surprised me.
Kim Jones and Jill Duncan, our guests on this morning's Community Voice program. The Community Foundation of West Georgia had recently completed a door-to-door survey of those living in the 5 local extended stay hotels in the area in an effort to discover some barriers to obtaining more permanent housing and develop community-based strategies. That survey is completed. Community Foundation, they're sharing these findings with the public, and they're touching on it a little bit on this morning's program. Want to identify what can be done to move people from precarious to permanent housing. That's the name of the report, Precarious to Permanent Housing. And again, if you'd like to get some more details on it, Community Foundation West Georgia, cfwg.net, and you can get all that information there. We're going to take our final break and come back and conclude our conversation with Kim Jones and Jill Duncan. Community Voice, brought to you by Tanner Health System and Oak Mountain Academy, here on News Talk 1330 FM 106.3.
Travel, get-togethers, Sunday morning worship. COVID-19 has almost put a stop to our way of life. Vaccination is our best shot at getting back to normal. The COVID-19 vaccine is based on more than a decade of research. Trials show it's safe and can provide up to 95% protection when you've received both doses. Tanner is committed to making the vaccine as widely available as possible, giving you a shot at getting back to life. Until then, keep wearing your mask, washing your hands, and avoid gatherings. Learn more and get updates at tanner.org/vaccine.
At Oak Mountain Academy, our daily schedule includes convocation, prayer, and the Pledge of Allegiance. By doing so, we build a family-like community where all students grow and flourish and personal faith is encouraged. Through community service and a historical approach to biblical study, our students are taught the value of the warrior way, honesty, respect, and responsibility. Oak Mountain Academy, we are a family creating legacies. To learn more, visit oakmountain.us.
All right, 8:52. Welcome back to the WLBB Community Voice program here on News Talk 1330 FM 106.3. Also streaming live online at newstalk1330.com. I'm your host this morning, Colin Worthington. My guest this morning, Kim Jones, president of the Community Foundation of West Georgia. Jill Duncan is a community volunteer with this project we're talking about this morning. Community Foundation of West Georgia had completed a door-to-door survey of those living in 5 local extended stay hotels. It was an effort to discover barriers to obtaining more permanent housing and develop community-based strategies. Again, the survey is complete, and details and a summary are available on the Community Foundation of West Georgia website at cfwg.net. And, if this conversation this morning has piqued your interest a little bit, there's a lot of information on there. I think everybody should at least be curious to read about it, and maybe you want to participate in helping them fix this issue locally. Kim, you had mentioned affordable housing. That was part of the survey. Over the last year, I remember we've used this phrase, affordable housing, so many times in stories. I guess did you learn what affordable housing would be for these people living in these hotels, motels, and is there available affordable housing in the community, do you think?
Well, I mean, that's a multifaceted question. I'm going to give you a multifaceted.
Oh, you've got 6 minutes, Kim. Go ahead.
I think, we actually ran across folks from, it's all in the spectrum. And I think that's one thing kind of as you look at this, there's not going to be a one size fits all, and there's not going to be a solution, the magic one that's going to kind of take care of everybody one fell swoop. I think there's going to be a multitude of approaches that's going to, hopefully, move some of these folks and others that aren't staying extended stay, but maybe are in some very precarious housing situations. I mean, we had about 45% of them who were making less than $1,300 a month. And so, that's, you think about, okay, that's housing, food, and all those kind of things, transportation, that kind of stuff. So you've got to kind of look at what can we do to kind of move them up from a wage standpoint or education standpoint so they can force those. There's going to have to be some, what I call kind of transitional housing, from the standpoint where maybe they're paying below market rates. And then over a period of time, some of these folks just really need what I call a temporary timeout, maybe a 12, 18, 24 month kind of period of time where they're paying maybe below market rate rent in order to get that GED, get a certificate, get an associate's degree, to try to get a higher wage job. And so I think that's one kind of bucket. And then we also ran into people who are, about 36% that are making between $1,900 and $3,000 a month. I mean, I even ran into a gentleman who was bringing home about $2,600 a month. and very steady, income. And to Jill's point, you look kind of in the room, it was neat as a pin. And he was retired at 67. He said, I don't want a house. At my age, I don't want a house. I want an apartment. I want a nice, clean, safe apartment that's kind of close to my work. And so, he certainly could afford, a market rent. But I think it's going to have to take kind of a mixture of things that we can even look at things like creative, maybe reevaluating some zoning situations where people are allowed to have basement apartments or maybe a garage apartment. And there also, there's some caveats and kind of things that go into protect, the single family, housing zoning. But I think we've got some underutilized residential space. So I don't know necessarily we need to build a 500 unit apartment building. And the last thing we want to do is to throw a bunch of people, a bunch of poor people into a neighborhood that never ever works. It needs to be an integrated setting of mixed incomes, mixed housing for people to kind of understand and build a sense of community. Again, this information is available via the Community Foundation of West Georgia website, cfwg.net. Kim, how many people participated in this? Surveyors or? Yeah, the surveyors. How many people volunteered to help you out with this? We actually probably had about 20. Jill, would you think about 20, 25? We had a varying crew. We had some folks that came every time. I think we did this over 5 different Sunday afternoons and a Thursday evening. And it was some folks I didn't know. So it was a lot of fun. And I think too, just the care. And some of this we had learned from the Norcross folks was that one of the things I wish they had done was to have like a list of resources. Because anybody participating in the survey, we gave them like a little, goodie bag that had, a couple little treats and then some dental, some kind of little items in there. And then, if we found out somebody said, well, I'm just looking for a job, we had somebody from the Department of Labor, so we grabbed her and brought her over there. And so she actually developed like a list of 4 or 5 employers who were hiring literally like on the spot. And so we would hand that out. So we were doing some kind of social work on the fly as we went. But yeah, the folks that we had on this team were amazing. They were great. They really care about the community and trying to see what we can do to help. Well, ladies, I have about 2 minutes left here. What's been the feedback? I think this has been out for about 10 days, maybe. It's been available. What's been the feedback from the public, the response to this? It's actually created a lot more conversation than I expect. I mean, when you do stuff like this, you never really know kind of what the feedback's going to be. We've gotten on our website, I'd like to encourage people, if you want to sign up to kind of stay in the conversation or be part of the solution, there's a way that you can sign up, and we'll be sending out emails periodically about different work groups as we work through this. But it's people have just been really surprised at some of what we found out this is not what they expected. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of surprising results in here that they were like, I just had no idea. Well, you ladies definitely presented some interesting things to think about this morning, and I appreciate you talking with us about it, and I feel a little more educated myself on it. Jill, do you want to say something before we hang up here? We got about 30 seconds. I encourage everybody to read the survey, the results, and just become a little more educated on what the challenges are and the ways that our community can pull together to give some people maybe a hand up and some opportunities to, if they do choose to move into more permanent housing, some opportunities to be able to do that. It's definitely educational. CFWG.net. Jill Duncan, Kim Jones, thank you, ladies, for talking with us this morning. Thank you. Appreciate it. And thank you for listening to this morning's Community Voice program here on News Talk 1330, FM 106.3. Time right now is 8:59. Stay tuned for national headlines coming up right now, followed by your local news. Glenn Beck is on the air. Rush Limbaugh, probably a guest host this morning. And then Sean Hannity is on from 3 to 6. Enjoy your Thursday.
National headlines and the local stories you care about. WLBB, Carrollton. News Talk 1330, FM 106.3.